Hey everyone, this is Matt Perez, and welcome to video 8 in our SOLIDWORKS API Project Tracker series. Up to this point, we have taken care of all the custom property information and the file name, file location with the SOLIDWORKS interface. So we know how to get access to that stuff, and we know that it's working properly. We have also started creating our user form. Now, the user form is going to be a big part of it. You need to make sure that it's easy to navigate, it's easy to use, it's robust, it does everything you need. So we do have to spend quite a few videos dealing with user forms. So if you already have a good grasp on user forms and you don't really need to see this, then you can go ahead and skip to the Excel section, which is a couple videos after this one. But for the most part, it's very important that you spend the time getting this right. Now, the reason I'm doing this after the code portion is because I don't want to focus on all the time that it takes to create this user form and later determine that I want to change the functionality or something's not working how I expect it to. It's very important that you understand the code first before you start working in these forms. Now we want to handle a couple of the buttons that we need. We know we need to log in, log out, and we also want the user to be able to do things like clear the note or hide the overall form. Now there's no real need to hide the form, but we're going to put that on there just to make sure we understand the functionality. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start a button and just draw it out. It's going to be command button 1. Now I want to make sure that command button 1 in terms of this left value 12 is the same as my frame just above it. So I want to make sure that everything lines up. I also want the caption to change. I don't want to say command button 1. I want to say log in. I also want to change the text of this. I want to make it bold, and I'm going to make it 10-point font. We might even need to make it bigger depending on how much text you place and how big you make this button. So the button is currently 30 high and 84 wide. Let's go ahead and change it to be 80 wide. I want to rename this button. It's currently command button 1, but I need it to be something that I can understand in the code. So I'm going to say CMB log in. So that way when I'm dealing with the code portion of this, I don't have to remember what command button 1 was. Now I can copy this button, Control C, and then paste another version of it. So now I have the same exact button. It's command button 1 because I renamed the first one, and it also says log in. I want this to say log out, and I'm going to change this name to CMB log out. Now that we've handled the log in and log out button, I'm going to go ahead and create 2 more buttons. Now, I don't necessarily know that the size is going to work out for this one, but let's take a look at left. So the value for left in this one is 12. The value for left in this one is 102. So now we know that this one is 102 in reference or in relation to the left side of our form. I'm going to create one more command button. And this one's a little bit shorter, but I want it to align with the right side. So I'm going to right click, align, right. Now one thing you'll notice is the first thing you select and the second thing you select, the order definitely matters. The first thing you select when you go to align is going to be moved. The second thing is going to stay fixed and will be the reference for that alignment. We also want to make sure that the height is the same. The height of our other buttons is 30. This one is also 30. So we can change the text for this one. This is going to be clear note. And again, I want to change the text. I'm going to make this bold. Let's make it 10-point font and see how that looks. Now you'll notice that clear note is obscured here. If we go down to this bottom option, this last option, word wrap, we can change that to true and the text will wrap around. Now what this is telling me is that I either have to make this a smaller font or I need to make it regular and not bold. Now since it's clearing the note, I don't necessarily need it to be as attractive or as in your face as the login and log out. Now I'm going to add a few more boxes. So what I want to do is add boxes that I can control the color of. So I'm going to use a text box and I'm going to place this underneath my login and I'm going to place one underneath my log out. Now it's important that these have the same values as well. So in the width section, I'm going to make sure that this is 80. And you can see that it looks pretty good where it is, centered underneath there. I am going to change some of the values too. So we have some custom things that we can do. We have a special effect and it's automatically sunken by default. What I want to do is raise it. So this means it now looks like a button. If I play the form, That area underneath looks like a button. This gives me some leverage on things that I want to do with it, because that box is going to be the one that's going to be green when you're logged in or red if you haven't logged in yet. So this means that when we change it from red to green, we can also change the special effect to be sunken instead of bumped or flat. The next thing I need to do is copy it. So I have text box 1, but I want to change the name of this. Instead of text box 1, I'm going to call it color box in. And I want to copy this, paste it. I'm going to put one here, and instead of text box 1, we're going to call this color box out, and all the properties will be the same between the two. Now I need one more button. Now this last button is going to be hide form, and again, we don't really need it for the functionality of what we're doing here, but I think it's important just to have it in here so we know exactly how to hide the form and different ways to handle that. So the clear note button is 54 wide. You can see that this command button we just added is also 54 wide. Its height is currently 18. If we look at the height of the color boxes next to it, they're also 18. So all we need to do is make sure that we have the same alignment. So I'm going to align the rights. We're going to change this from command button 3 to CMB hide form. And we also want to change the caption. And again, we can change the text if needed. Now this may or may not work. Looks like there's enough room to do hide form. All right. So now we can resize the overall form because this is all the functionality that we need to have on this specific form. I'm going to go ahead and save it, and we want to look at how to do a few things. We're not going to worry about login and logout just yet, but we do need to use these buttons to control the color of these two separate boxes. But the first thing I want to do is come into my user form 1, and I want to view the code. Now all the way at the bottom, after I've taken care of populating the text boxes for project number, project name, and file name, I'm going to put in some options here to control the color of those two boxes. Now we're dealing with user form 1, so I'm going to type in user form 1 dot. Now if we look through this list, it not only has a bunch of different properties and things that we can do, but it also has things like our command button. See the command button log in, log out, and then we also have these color box in, color box out. Now these are things that we can control the properties of. So I'm going to select color box in. If I hit the period again, this gives me all of those custom properties on the left-hand side, things that we can modify. Now what I want to control is the back color. So you can see here that we have back color, and I'm going to control that by saying equals RGB, which is red, green, blue, and this is a standard way to handle colors, and you'll notice that once I put that parentheses in there, red is an integer, green is an integer, blue is an integer. So I want the box to be red before anybody touches any buttons. So we're going to say 255, 0, 0. Then we're going to just close that off. We want to do this again for color box out, and this is going to be equal to RGB, and again it's going to be red, so 255, 0, 0, close that off, and we'll go ahead and save this, and let's play the form and make sure that this functionality is working. Alright, so now both of those boxes are currently red. So that means that functionality, the way that we're trying to control that property, is working just fine. So let's go back into our code and take a look at what we can do now. So at this point in time, we have a note, we have login, log out, we have clear note, we have hide form. These are all areas that the user can interact with. They can either type a note in here, they can press these buttons, and hopefully we want them to do some functions. So for right now, I want to just double click on login, and it creates a private sub, CMB login, which is the name of that button, that command button, and then it says _click. So what we're doing is we're writing some code for what happens when the user clicks that button. There are a bunch of other things. If we look at this drop-down list, before drag over, before drop or paste, double click, enter, error, exit, there's a bunch of different things that we can do within here. But for right now, we're dealing with the command button, login, and when the user clicks it. So right now we're not dealing with Excel, we're not copying any properties and pasting them to Excel. We haven't handled how to open and close Excel just yet. So what I want to do at this point in time is when the user clicks that button, I simply want to change the color of that box. So we're going to do user form 1 dot color box in dot back color equals RGB. Now in this case, we don't want it to be red, so the red integer is 0, green integer is 255, and blue integer is 0. We also want to control a few more things. So we're going to say userform1 dot colorboxin dot, and let's take a look at all the different things that we can do. So we can sort of pick through this list and think about things that we can do, but we already know the three things that we want to control are the back color, which we've already taken care of. We've changed it from red to green. We also want to control the special effect. We want to change it from raised to sunken. And we also want to control the text on it. We want it to tell the user that they have logged in if they don't understand that red means logged out and green means logged in. So the next thing I'm going to do is userform1.colorboxin.text. So as I start to type, you see that text is in there. And then we want to set this equal to quotation marks logged in. The next thing we want to do is userform1.colorboxin. And in this case, we want to deal with the special effect. So I start typing special effect and it comes up. This is equal to, and you'll notice that we get a pop-up list of all the different things that we can change. We want to change it to sunken. So as you can see here, we haven't really had to type anything in. Everything's worked pretty easily because of how we declared our variables and the way that we're using these functions. So let's go back to the user form, let's save it, and let's check the functionality. So currently, the box is red. When we click logged in, it changes to green, and it shows logged in. Now, because we haven't added any additional functionality to anything else, it only works once, which is fine because you're only going to log in once, you're going to log out once, and then we can reinitialize the form. So at this point in time, we'll go back to VBA, and we're going to write some code for the log out button. Very similar process here. We're going to do userform1.colorboxout, in this case, .backcolor equals RGB, and again 0, 255, 0, so that we're changing it to green. Userform1.colorboxout, and we're not going to be controlling the text in this case because once they actually log out, the form will shut and everything will close. So we really only want to control the special effect. And we're going to also change this to sunken. All right, so at this point in time, back to our user form, save it again, play. We log in, we log out, everything's working properly. We know that we can control the color of these areas and that the buttons function when we press them and they do the things that we want. To handle just a few more things in this code, we're going to go ahead and take care of the hide form, which again creates a new sub. And inside the sub, we're simply going to say userform1.hide. Now there are two different ways to get rid of this form. There are actually probably more ways to get rid of this form, but two ways that we're really going to deal with. And that is hiding the user form. Now when we hide the user form, any of the values, any of the things that are done to the user form stay. Everything is saved in the memory. If we use the line of code unload me, this will actually unload the form, or basically unload the user form and reset all the values, all the things that we saved to. Now that means things like changing the color of these boxes. When we initialize, we set them to red, but as we press these buttons, they're actually changed to green. And things like file path, we save the file path as the path name, the SOLIDWORKS active document path name. Things like time and date and so on. If we populate any declared variables, strings or long values or whatever they might be, those are saved in memory, and when we unload the form, they will get cleared. So right now we're going to be dealing with hide the form. We also want to deal with clear note. Now currently we have a text box for our note. Now all we really need to do when we're using the command button 1 click, now you'll notice that we didn't rename this. If we go back to the user form, clear note is still called command button 1. So what I want to do is change this to CMB clear note. That makes things a little bit easier to understand. If I go back to the code, I need to make sure that I change this as well. So it's going to be CMB clear note. Now inside here, we want to control the text box that the note is located in. If we use this drop-down list from the properties, you see that we have command buttons, we have color box in and out, we have frames. So there's a lot of information here. You can always go back and view the user form as well. Click on the note and see that it's txbx note. So as we look at the code, all we really need to do here is say txbx note.value is equal to an empty string. So that way if the user types anything in, it's going to re-clear that. So let's go into our user form, let's save this, and let's play it. Let's test a few things. So let's say we just type something in this note area. We can log in, we can log out. If we use clear note, it removes everything in there. So as we type this clear note button, all it does is insert an empty string, basically shows that nothing is in there. Now, let's say that we actually type something in here. When we hide the form, as I mentioned, using the userform1.hide will not clear anything from memory. All that information is still there. When we play it, you can see that these boxes are still green, the note is still there, nothing has changed, nothing has cleared from the form. We can still interact with it. The reason this is important, the reason that being able to hide the form is important, is because when we actually go to log in, what we want to do is we want to change this box to green, we want to show that it's logged in, we're going to interact with Excel a little bit, we're going to take values and do things with them. But we don't want to unload the form. We want to keep all this project name, number, information, the file location, anything the user has already typed into the note section, we want to keep all that there. So when we reopen, when we re-show that user form, nothing is cleared. We still have a first part of our note. Then let's say after you work with the file a little while, you might make some more notes. So as we make more notes, then we can log out. Then everything will get cleared, the form will get unloaded, and all the rest of the information can be sent off to our spreadsheet. So that's why it's important that we hide the form and we understand the difference between hiding it and unloading it, because there are certain times that we want to clear everything out of the memory, and there are certain times where we just want to hide this form. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and close this out, and I think that is a good place to stop this video because we handled a lot of information. We finished off a lot of information dealing with command buttons and showing how we can interact with text boxes such as this note and clearing the note and so on. So if you have any questions on anything you saw here, please email us at solidworksupport@mlc-cad.com, and we'll see you next time.